Prime Minister's working visit to UAE yields 40.6 billion ringgit in committed investments. Flight ticket subsidy for varsity students expanded. Good evening and Salam Malaysia Madani. You're watching Malaysia Tonight. I'm SAHIH. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim's working visit to the United Arab Emirates UAE has yielded 40.6 billion ringgit of cumulative committed investments to Malaysia in sectors such as renewable energy, aerospace and logistics. The Investment, Trade and Industry Ministry said the investments secured include a commitment by Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company PJSC Masdar to invest up to 37.8 billion ringgit to develop renewable energy projects with a 10 gigawatt capacity in Malaysia. An MOU between MIDA and Masdar was exchanged today, witnessed by the Prime Minister, MITI Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Tunku Abdul Aziz and Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir. Another key outcome of the working visit was on a new leadership announcement for the Malaysia UAE Business Council MUBC. It said, President and CEO of Petronas, Tan Sri Tengku Muhammad Taufik Tunku Aziz, has been appointed chairman for the Malaysian chapter, while Mr. Rashid Al-Blushi, Senior Vice President of Mubadala Energy, has been appointed chairman for the UAE chapter. In another development, the Prime Minister received a phone call from Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud, and they reviewed the distinguished bilateral relations between both countries along with opportunities for their development. Additionally, a number of issues of common interest were also discussed during the call. Malaysia and Saudi Arabia established diplomatic ties in 1961. Saudi Arabia is Malaysia's largest trading partner in the West Asia, with total trade valued at more than $10 billion in 2022. Malaysian officials have been expressing intentions to strengthen ties and explore new areas of cooperation with Saudi Arabia. The deployment of the Petronas 5G private network sets the stage for a dynamic partnership between the government, private sector and academia. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof said the collaboration will create an environment where innovation thrives, allowing the nation to harness the complete capabilities of 5G technology while presenting an opportunity for collaborative efforts to fully unlock the potential of the technology.
With its fast connectivity, low latency and capacity to handle massive data flows, 5G will empower industries to innovate, compete and excel on a global scale. It will enable seamless communications, enhance automation and facilitate the growth of industry, crucial to economic success.
According to the Deputy Premier, Malaysia will remain committed to substantial investments in digital connectivity infrastructure in pursuit of leveraging technology for innovation and societal advancement. He also highlighted that as of September 2023, Malaysia's 5G network coverage in populated areas stood at 70.2%, with 5G subscriptions totaling to 2.49 million, translating to a penetration rate of 7.4%. Mobile network operators and Digital Nasional Berhad DNB are expected to sign share subscription agreements (SSA) by the middle of this month. Communications and Digital Minister Fahmi Fadil said the mobile network operators will hold equal stakes in the DNB, while the government will maintain its 35% stake in the 5G network infrastructure outfit. Fahmi also said currently the government's focus is to execute the SSAs for the mobile network operators to take up equity in the DNB before furthering discussions on the 5G second network deployment.
There is a structure, there is a discussion, ongoing discussion. We have not yet come to a decision as to which MNO will be in which entity. Entity A, which is DNB, or Entity B. I believe we anticipate the signing of the share subscription agreement for take-up of equity on DNB to take place first before further discussions on the second network will be at a more advanced stage.
He also highlighted that the government will retain its stake in the DNB ahead of the deployment of the dual network model for the 5G rollout. Malaysia, through the Department of Statistics DOSM, has been elected as the Vice Chair of the 12th Organisation of Islamic Cooperation OIC Statistical Commission OIC Statcom, an intergovernmental forum of paramount significance in the global statistical community. In a statement released today, DOSM said the achievement was a testament to Malaysia's dedication to advancing statistical activities and its commitment to international cooperation and diplomacy. Chief Statistician Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the appointment was a reflection of DOSM's unwavering dedication towards international cooperation with the aim of promoting official statistics and working towards the Agenda 2030 goal of Leave No One Behind. Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzair led the Malaysian delegation at the OIC Statcom Forum on 3rd and 4th October in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, held by the OIC to enhance statistical capabilities through global collaboration. The forum saw the gathering of member states' national statistical office leaders, emphasizing the significance of sharing knowledge and learning to produce accurate and reliable data for informed decision-making. The subsidy initiative for the purchase of flight tickets has now been extended to students from polytechnics and community colleges under the Higher Education Ministry, as well as matriculations and teacher education institutes under the Education Ministry. The initiative, initially undertaken by the Transport Ministry only for public university students on domestic routes between Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah, Sarawak and Labuan, will begin today. This effort is one of the Unity Government's initiative to strengthen the relationship between Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah, Sarawak and Labuan, in addition to addressing the cost of living issues. Eligible students can apply for subsidized airfare tickets purchases from any airline company such as Malaysia Airlines, AirAsia, Batik Air and My Airline. After receiving the application, the airline company will issue a digital voucher worth RM300 to the student as a credit shell for purchasing flight tickets. If the ticket purchase is less than RM300, the remaining balance of the digital voucher will remain in the credit shell and can be used for future ticket purchases. The final redemption date for purchasing flight tickets with the voucher is on 31st December. The Election Commission EC has not received any complaints on election offences during the campaigning period for the Pelangai state election so far. EC Chairman Tan Sri Abdul Ghani Saleh said this includes concerns about the misuse of assets and machinery for campaign purposes by any party as previously alleged by past Deputy President Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man. Last Wednesday, Tuan Ibrahim called on the EC to investigate Barisan Nasional PN machinery for allegedly using state government's assets and machinery in addition to giving incentives to the people throughout the Pelangai by-election campaign period. However, the claim was refuted by Pahang BN Chairman Datuk Sri Wan Rosdi Wan Ismail yesterday, saying that Pahang BN is ready to be investigated by the EC. On the preparations for the by-election, Tan Sri Abdul Ghani, when met today, said all is running well and the EC expected the voter turnout on election day tomorrow to reach 75%, with the official result expected to be around 9 p.m. The Pelangai state by-election sees a three-cornered fight between BN candidate Datuk Amizar Abu Adam, Perikatan Nasional PN candidate Kasim Samad and independent candidate Hasli Hilmi DM Zulhashi. The by-election is being called following the death of its incumbent, Datuk Sri Johari Harun from BN, who was killed in a plane crash in Bandar Elmina, Shah Alam, Selangor on 17 August. Coming up in our foreign segment, at least 100 killed in drone attack on Syrian military academy. An attack on a Syrian military academy killed 112 people, with state media blaming terrorist organisation for the drone strike in government-held homes. Separately, Turkish air raids in the country's Kurdish-held northeast killed at least 11 people after Ankara had threatened retaliation for a bomb attack. An army statement carried by official news agency SANA said armed terrorist organizations targeted the graduation ceremony for officers of the military academy in the central city of Homs. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a Britain-based monitor, reported 112 dead, including 21 civilians, 11 of them women and girls. It said at least 120 people were wounded. There was no immediate claim of responsibility. The government declared 3 days of mourning starting today. In the rebel-held Idlib region, residents reported heavy bombardment by government forces in apparent retaliation. The observatory said 8 people had been killed and some 30 wounded. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres was deeply concerned over the drone attack and the retaliatory shelling. At least 40 people have died in flash floods inundating India northeast as army teams plotted helicopter rescues for more of the thousands stranded in the deluge. Violent torrents struck the remote state of Sikkim after the sudden bursting of a high-altitude glacial lake near India's border with Nepal and China. Downstream search and rescue teams recovered more bodies overnight as the water cuts a swathe through the countryside towards the Bay of Bengal. Nearly 8,000 others were taking shelter at makeshift relief camps set up at schools, government offices and guest houses, according to a state government bulletin. A critically endangered 8-month-old Javan rhino calf has been discovered in West Indonesia. The rhino, identified as the fourth calf of a 12-year-old mother rhino named Kasih, is presumed to have been born in February based on data compiled by park officials at Ujung Kulon National Park. The calf was first seen on park wildlife surveillance camera in August, but its discovery was not announced until yesterday evening due to the time frame it took for park officials to collect data on it. According to the World Wildlife Fund, the Javan rhino is the world's most threatened species of rhino with only around 80 individuals, which are all believed to be confined to Ujung Kulon National Park. Next up in sports, Malaysia clinched silver in women's kata team event at Hangzhou Asian Games. The national women's kata team won a silver medal in the Hangzhou Asian Games today. The trio of lovely Anna Robert, Nacy Nelly, Eva Ferrer-Rogin and Natalia Sharorini Yampil finished second to Vietnam. Malaysia collected 39.00 points while Vietnam's Nguyen Thie Puong, Nguyen Ngoc Tram and Lu Thi Tu Uyen registered 42.70. Earlier in the day, the Malaysian squad entered the final after beating Brunei. The national men's hockey team ended their Hangzhou Asian Games campaign in 6th place after losing 5-2 to Pakistan in the 5th classification match of the Gongshu Canal Sports Park Stadium today. Coach A. Arul Selvaraj's team, who are ranked 10th in the world, drew first blood when defender Muhammad Aminuddin Mohammad Zain found the net of a penalty corner set piece in 5th minute. However, their joy was short-lived as Pakistan levelled the scores just 3 minutes later through a penalty corner goal by Ahmad Arbas. After a goalless second quarter, Pakistan edged 2-1 ahead through another penalty corner goal, this time by Abdul Rahman in the 37th minute. The final quarter saw Pakistan shoot into a 4-1 lead through a field goal by Abdul Rana in the 51st minute and a penalty corner goal by Ahmad Mohammad 2 minutes later. Although the Speedy Tigers managed to narrow the deficit to 2-4 in the dying minutes of the game through a penalty corner goal by Muhammad Razi Abdul Rahim, Pakistan sealed a comfortable 5-1 through a field goal by Afras. The Youth and Sports Ministry KBS through the National Sports Council MSN will focus on further strengthening the performances of medalists at the Hangzhou Asian Games following Malaysian success in surpassing their 27 medal target. Minister Hannah Yeoh, who congratulated the national contingent, said the ministry would conduct a comprehensive study on the achievement of all athletes competing in the Asian Games to see how they can be assisted to further improve their performances. Okay.
Kaji semua keputusan dan tengok bagaimana lagi kita boleh perkasakan pemenang-pemenang pingat ini supaya mereka boleh terus cemerlang. Yang dapat gangsa, mereka boleh sasarkan pingat perak. Yang dapat perak, boleh sasarkan pingat emas. Dan yang dapat pingat emas, kekalkan pingat emas dalam Sukan Asia yang akan datang.
She said athletes who showed potential to compete in the 2024 Paris Olympics would be evaluated for possible inclusion in the Road to Goal RTG program, while overseas training would be considered for sports not in the Olympics program. The Malaysian contingent have collected 5 golds, 6 silvers and 17 bronzes for a total of 28 medals so far. Now for our next segment on the table. Over to you, Mohana.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Sahi. With the World Mental Health Day coming up soon on the 10th of October, we shine a spotlight on the concerns and current issues surrounding mental health. Live with us in the studio tonight is President of the Malaysian Mental Health Association and Director of Impact Lab on Mental Health and Wellbeing at Taylor's University, Professor Dr. Andrew Mohanraj. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Thank you, Mohana.
Now
Good to be on the show.
Thank you. Let's dive straight into the theme of this year's World Mental Health Day. Mental health is a universal human right. Now, as a board member of the World Federation for Mental Health, I think you can give us an insider's perspective of the significance of the theme, how it comes about, and why this theme was chosen this year.
Okay. The World Federation for Mental Health was established in 1948 in the aftermath of the World War II with the purpose of looking into the affairs of persons with psychosocial disorders, but under the bigger umbrella of promoting world peace. So the World Federation for Mental Health has been entrusted to propose the theme for World Mental Health Day every year, and this theme is then proposed, submitted to the United Nations and the WHO, which would then endorse the theme. So we have chosen this theme this year, as you have clearly mentioned that just now, because in many parts of the world, abuses of people with psychosocial disabilities continues to happen. And because of that, the World Federation felt this would be a more appropriate theme this year. And of course, abuses can mean different things. It can be very stark abuses of human rights, but also subtly it can be stigma and discrimination and not having access to appropriate health care. So hence, from the universal perspective, this seems to be a more appropriate theme for this year.
Okay, Prof, if that's the case, how would we apply that concept of mental health as a universal human right here in Malaysia?
A good question, I must say, because in Malaysia, we know that, there is no stark violations or abuses of human rights of people with mental health abuses, as opposed to several other countries, even in our region. So we don't have all that, but we are still battling with other issues like stigma and discrimination, stigma in the home front, discrimination in the community, in the workplace, in schools, in universities. So all these matters still needs to be dealt with. And in some ways, when you look at it from a human rights perspective, there also has some relevance to this theme. So I think we should look at human rights in mental health from a different perspective, on a scaled-up perspective, perhaps.
Okay. On that note, I understand that mental health professionals adopt the biopsychosocial model when it comes to treating mental health issues. You've mentioned this before. And as the director of the Impact Lab on Mental Health and Wellbeing at Taylor's University, can you perhaps walk us through this? What does it actually mean, so a layman can understand this?
This model, this biopsychosocial model, was first introduced about half a century ago. And it still continues to be the basis of our understanding of not just mental conditions, but health as a whole. So in this model, it says that physical conditions or mental health conditions has 3 main factors. That is the biological factor, the psychological factor, and the social factor. Now, when you look at the biological factor in mental health or mental health conditions, you are talking about the transmitters in the brain, the brain structure itself, and the pathology associated with that structure, which may not be complete or may have some damage in that structure.
And chemical imbalances.
And chemical imbalances, yes. And when you look at the psychological perspective, then you're talking about, the past trauma or difficulties in interacting with one another in the family, how we process fears, and what is our cultural perspective of mental health and the attributes of mental health conditions. That is from the psychological perspective.
Okay.
And from the social perspective, we also understand that the environment has got a big role to play in the mental health condition, whether it is the environment in the family, in the workplace, financial issues, job insecurity, or any event that had happened place, any loss, bereavement, and things like that, is the social factors.
Would the pandemic come under that?
Absolutely, because, and if we view mental health conditions from that perspective, then obviously the way we address mental health conditions should also have these three components, not just biological, but looking into the environment and the psychological perspectives, and that's how we would tailor the intervention. And in the pandemic, the World Health Organization, issued a scientific brief stating that in the first year alone, we saw 25% increase in depression and anxiety in the world. These are worldwide figures. It's also applicable in Malaysia. And of course, when you look at it, more in depth, we find that social isolation, loneliness, financial insecurity, and things like that were the main causes. Undoubtedly, now, after we have sort of more settled, with the pandemic, things have improved. But there are other factors that continues to linger on.
Correct. I was going to ask you, because we keep talking about post-pandemic recovery, and the focus is always on the economic, the financial aspect. But what about the mental health state? Yes.
That has lingered on when you look at, the cases of depression and anxiety, with the, especially when you look at youth mental health, and we know that there was a rise in cases of suicide and self-harm behavior. So that has somehow also, it's taken some time to be resolved. And we still continue to address that, although in a lesser extent. And changes in work culture from, working from home or hybrid working, and even the change in the terms of reference of certain jobs have changed, making some jobs redundant.
Yes.
So we are still recovering from that. I mean, things have improved, but unfortunately there are still things that we have to address, which has come about as a result of the pandemic. In some ways there was a silver lining to this, I would say, because it was a sort of a wake-up call for us, for governments across the world, to actually realize that you've got to do something about mental health. And doing something about it now means not just addressing the situation at hand, but being prepared for, what happens if there's another pandemic of this nature. How prepared are we to address the situation, and how do we ensure or work towards a resilient community after such a pandemic.
And speaking about resilience and preparation, I've heard you mention before that physical health and mental health are two sides to the same coin. Can you help walk us through this? What do you mean by this? Can you elaborate on? Does that mean that if I have physical health, I will have mental health, or I need to have both at the same time? Or if I don't have physical health, does that mean that my mental health will suffer?
Well, not all physical health or, physical conditions can lead to mental health issues. But we know there are certain physical conditions. If you look at chronic pain, chronic cancer, for example, cancer, which is often a chronic journey in one's life upon diagnosis, or cardiovascular diseases, these do have the mental health implications. implications. And if you look at mental health as such, there are many conditions, depression and anxiety, can result in some, in poor sleep, in lack of motivation to do things, poor concentration. And people with pre-existing mental health conditions like chronic psychosis or depression or anxiety also somehow, would not get appropriate physical care as because of their condition, and perhaps they don't get the support necessary. So if you look at persons with chronic psychosocial disorders, you will find that their average lifespan is less than a person without psychosocial disorders. So clearly, mental health has got something to do with physical health. And conversely, of course, persons with physical conditions can also, as a result of the chronicity of their condition, also result in mental health issues, having poor sleep, poor concentration, depression, and things like that. So they are, very closely related. And as you said rightly, they're, both sides of a coin, and there is no health without mental health, really.
Thank you very much. That's very insightful, actually. I think these are things which are not very, you don't see people talking about it often enough, I think. True. Often overlooked. On that note, with the budget 2024 coming up really soon, can you please tell us what kind of support should we expect from the government as a society? And as president of the Malaysian Mental Health Association, do you have a wish list?
Oh, certainly. My wish list is very long, but I will just give you a few points. Well, the last budget, 2023, did see an increase, a boost of about 35 million ringgit or so from the previous budget. And this was largely channeled to the Centre of Excellence for Mental Health that we have established in this country. And I think that's really good news. Of course, if you ask me, I would wish for a bigger budget, no doubt, because it still hovers, it's less than 2% of our annual budget, less than 2% of the allocation from the health budget, not the national budget, but from the health budget itself. Ideally, we would expect 5%, but I think realistically we can aim for 3 to 3.5%. That will be something more realistic. And I would also like to urge the government to continue this support, particularly via the Centre for Mental Health and Excellence, because this centre, among other things that it does, one of its mandate is to bring together NGOs and civil society organizations to be able to do something for mental health, because the government alone cannot do things on its own. It needs the support of all stakeholders. So as far as my wish list is concerned, number one, I've already mentioned, I'm hoping for an increase in the budgetary allocation for mental health. I would like all stakeholders to be brought in together and work in a complementary manner with the government to ensure appropriate services for families as well as persons with psychosocial disabilities.
And on that note, thank you so much, Professor. I really hope your wish list gets fulfilled.
I have a longer wish list, but I will not mention that now. We'll keep it for another day. But I do have this for you.
Thank you very much.
This is a green ribbon to commemorate World Mental Health Day. Please wear it on the 10th of October.
I will.
Thank you
very much. And that wraps up Malaysia Tonight. I'm Mohana Priya with SAHIH Samsudin. Malaysia Madani, tekad perpaduan, penuhi harapan. Thank you for your company. Good night.